What's going on, everybody? It is your boy Zamboni. I'm a musician and astrologer, and it is time to talk about the astrology of the week ahead. We still have a little winter weather situation going on right now. I know you can see in the reflection that I got a big blue sky, and I love to see it, but it's slushy and icy on the on the roads, and it's going to be difficult for me to get to the creek. So we are going to do this from here today. But you know what? We are not going to let some obstacles and some feelings get in the way of good communication and making things more beautiful right where we are. That's kind of the theme that we got going on this week. We've got early in the week especially, we've got big feelings and they look rowdy and out of pocket. This might be a way to think about that. So we've got a full moon early in the week in Cancer, which is the moon's domicile. This is where the moon is very moon-ish. The moon is very good at doing moon things there in Cancer. And so we would think that a full moon, when the moon is at its brightest, that it would be a situation where we'll do good moon things, like big moon stuff is going to go on. Like we're going to feel feelings and we're going to nourish about them and this kind of thing, right? What we can notice this time is that this full moon in Cancer is directly conjunct Mars retrograde there in late Cancer. So conjunct Mars retrograde. So Mars retrograde, Mars is already like feeling feelings there in Cancer, right? So Mars is going to be the action planet, the one who wants to like move things around and get things done. And, you know, there's like anger and motivation and stuff like that that is associated with Mars. And so put Mars into Cancer and Mars like kind of doesn't know what to do with himself. Like things like get a little out of hand sometimes. Things like turn into some kind of situation that can be a lot. Especially like big feelings that make you feel threatened or something like this, especially a Mars retrograde. So this is Mars moving backwards instead of forward. This is Mars like maybe being a little misdirected with the Mars energy. So Mars is going to be sharp about stuff, but maybe not, you know, cutting the wrong things, burning the wrong things, all of this kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like if we think about Mars in Cancer as being good for cooking in the kitchen, right? So Cancer is going to be the place where we do our nourishing and all of this kind of stuff, and Mars is going to be sharp in that place. Then it's where knives and fires can happen in a way that is nourishing, right? So we can like to see Mars in Cancer for that kind of thing. But Mars retrograde is likely to be sort of like moving things in the wrong direction. It's cutting yourself instead of cutting the onion. It's maybe cutting the onion and finding that you've got a strong allergic reaction or something like that, and you just like can't stop crying because the onion stuff is in your eyes and it hurts and it's painful and burning and stuff like that. Maybe it's burning the food and then you can't nourish the people because the food is burnt. Something like this, right? Mars is over-Marsing in the wrong direction there in Cancer. And then we put the moon there, and so the moon is the one who like sort of gives us whatever it touches, right? So the moon is going to be the one, we live in the sublunar sphere, and so wherever the moon is, whatever the moon is aspecting or touching, then that is the kind of feeling or situation that is involved. So there, during that full moon in Cancer, we're going to get big Mars misdirected and feeling big feelings and sensitive about it kind of energy. This looks like the kind of thing that is ready to go off and might be a little bit problematic with things, you know. Could think about like mama bear energy here, right? Like the idea of like feeling sensitive, feeling threatened, and then feeling like everything has to be destroyed as a result of that, which like sometimes is true. And, you know, if you've got cubs that you need to protect, then maybe you need to destroy some things in order to make that happen. But, you know, you might also find yourself in a situation where you're like, man, I sure wish I hadn't destroyed everything because some of that was going to be useful later, and now I have to rebuild some things, right? So there's a good, some good medicine for that might be to wait a little bit, to think twice before raising the whole field and destroying everything and everyone around, right? There's going to be some impetus to do that, right? To like go out and like, I just want to destroy because I feel sensitive and threatened. But, that's not the only thing that we have going on here. We've also got the sun in Capricorn. We've got Mercury in Capricorn. Capricorn is the sign, it's a Saturn sign. It's very good for traditions and boundaries and Saturn things like waiting or going slow and this sort of stuff, right? So there's an opportunity here to sort of wait. And, with Mercury there in Capricorn, Mercury is the communicator planet, right? Mercury is the one who wants to talk things through and think about how we can most effectively come to a solution, especially one that is traditionally viable or that follows the rules that have always existed in some kind of way. That's Mercury in Capricorn, right? That Mercury in Capricorn is also making a sextile to Venus and Saturn in Pisces. Now, Venus and Saturn in Pisces is cute. This is kind of tough on some of the Venus things sometimes. Venus in Pisces, Venus is exalted there in Pisces. Venus loves to be in Pisces. So Venus is the planet of relationship and harmony and touching and doing things that feel good, and things are delicious in this place. Just love to see some Venus in Pisces, right? Venus in Pisces, there with Saturn, going to be like, Saturn is a planet of boundaries and restrictions and rules and endings and stuff like this, right? So it's like a little tough on the Venus things, but Venus looks like it's really empowering to the Saturn things. So insofar as Mercury in Capricorn, who is ruled by Saturn, right, needs to slow down and think about what is traditionally or conventionally viable, then Venus looks like Venus is really in position to empower that kind of decision making such that it turns into something cooperative and helpful and coherent, cohesive in some kind of way, right? So there is an opportunity here in the Mars retrograde, sensitive, threatened, oh no situation, right? If we can, instead of burning the whole thing to the ground, which you might feel like you want to do early in the week, right? Instead of doing that, if we can take a little moment to wait, delay, just take a beat on that. Then later in the week, as Venus moves in to conjoin Saturn, and as Mercury moves in to sextile the two of them, and as Venus and Saturn in Pisces also make a square to Jupiter in Gemini. Jupiter is the planet of joy, luck, abundance, all of these kinds of things, like things want to improve or benefit in some kind of way. If we take all of that, especially which happens later in the week, then there's an opportunity here for cooperation, especially if we think about Venus in Pisces as like having a lot of big feelings about stuff, right? And usually Venus in Pisces wants those feelings to be delicious in some kind of way. If we are navigating big feelings that are difficult, then there might be a way to transform that into something that is useful or helpful or cooperative somehow. So, and especially utility shows up here in a big way if we're thinking about Mercury and the sun in Capricorn. Capricorn is a sign that typically, we can think about like building walls in Capricorn. And so there's a certain situation of like bricklaying, this kind of thing, right? So taking sand or taking dirt and being like, I can make this more useful than just letting it sit there, right? And so there's this sense of utility or making something that is tangible and viable out in the real world in some kind of way. I have this great Terence McKenna quote that I love, which is, if it's real, then it can take the pressure, right? And Capricorn is very much about making real things that can take the pressure. And so if we're thinking about Mercury as communicator planet, right? Finding ways to communicate finding ways to communicate such that cooperation and harmony is possible and that it can stand the test of time, that it is tangible and can take the pressure of some of the things that Mars retrograde is going to be really feeling big feelings about, right? So there's a sense of maybe being threatened in some kind of way, but if we can take that little breath and take a moment to be like, okay, so how can I talk this through with the party who is threatening me? Or how can I make some kind of way of expressing myself that doesn't necessarily have to destroy everything, including the things that are good to me, right? Mars retrograde, the full moon wants to knock shit over in the first place, right? Like that's just kind of how the full moon operates. Talk to a nurse or a hospital worker about the full moon. Shit gets wild under a full moon. Full moon with Mars is really gonna want to cause some damage, but you know, we don't necessarily have to do that. With all of this Saturn and Capricorn stuff, there's an opportunity here to be constructive as well. Appreciate y'all. See y'all next time.